This week's episode, called The Art and Science of B2B Copywriting, I'm a guest on another podcast. It's David Watson's podcast, and he and I talk all about everything to do with copywriting. It's really like the basics of how, the importance of research, how to create a value proposition and get your audience to understand what you're talking about, the role of emotions in copywriting. And I get also into the use of AI in copywriting, a little bit about video versus text in marketing, and a whole lot more. So let's jump right in.
Welcome back to the David Watson podcast. Today I spoke with Linda and we had a fascinating conversation, at least in a subject that fascinates me. And it's that whole kind of mysterious, almost magic-like circumstances. I'm lost for words in a sense, because it's all to do with the B2B marketing, copywriting, how you draft something well. And it's more than just writing a good tagline. It's what you got to learn about the customer, the client, where their customers and clients are, and how do you piece all of that together. And yeah, that's what Linda and I discussed today. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hello, welcome to the David Watson podcast, and good morning to you. How are you doing?
I am doing great. It's starting to get warm here in Arizona, and yesterday we hit 100 degrees for the first time, and it's only April, so I don't know what that means. But
wow. Yeah, we had a frost the other day. So
this is pretty cool.
Yeah. Do you get a high amount of rainfall in Arizona?
I'm sorry? Do
you get much rainfall in Arizona?
Not, it's funny because I've only been here 2 years. So we were living in California, and I'm originally from the East Coast of the US. So I'm used to weather. But California, we got rain. Here, the first year we're here, they call them monsoons. It literally is like the winds come through and it feels like the end of the world. And last summer, so the second summer we were here, we got hardly any rain. So, I mean, it's considered a desert. So, we don't expect a lot of rain, but sometimes
when it does happen, you know about it. Yeah. That makes sense. So, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is, obviously, because you do marketing, and marketing is one of those things that it kind of falls into a few areas for me. When it's done well, it is just artwork. It's just like, that is so clever. When it's not done well, you're like, you really should have hired somebody.
Right.
And if you did hire somebody, you should fire them. But it also falls into this funny category as well, where it's one of the most sold online courses, how to be a marketer. And it's
getting in copywriting, right? Yeah. Because they kind of,
it's that kind of crossover. And everyone seems to think they can copyright. Everyone seems to think they can market. And and it's just like, it's, I think, one of the most underappreciated skill sets, because of just when it's done so well, it is wow. So how did you get into it?
It's interesting you say that, because I always consider copywriting is sort of like acting. You only really notice it when it's bad. Otherwise, you just you kind of see it. I was a content writer for many years. And by that, I mean, I wrote for a lot of magazines. And it started way back when I was working as a personal trainer. I've always loved writing. And I used to get this free business magazine tossed on my driveway every week. And they had a column, and it was a fitness column. And I thought, I can write for this paper. So I sent the editor a pitch, and I didn't know what I was doing. And I was about, because I used to work out with people in their homes. So I said, how to create a home gym. Because a lot of people didn't know, like, how much space do you need? How do what should you include? And he goes, sure, go for it. And I was surprised, and I wrote it. And when it was published, he called me And he said, "This is great. How would you like to write for us on a regular basis?" And that was how I started with the whole magazine. So I ended up writing cover stories, and long story short, I expanded from the local magazine. This was a business publication, which is no longer around. And I started pitching all the national magazines. And I ended up getting into everything because it's sort of like snowballs, when you get known in the publishing world and you're a good writer, and editors talk. And I've had editors go from magazine to magazine, and they would bring me along like, "Hey, I'm going to be working at, such and such, and I'm going to have you write for us there." And so then the whole bottom kind of fell out of the publishing world, the print world. And literally overnight, I lost like 3/4 of my income because all the magazines were folding. And even the online magazines, I was writing for MSN Health, they decided that we're just going to use all repurposed content. My editor was upset, was out of her hands. She said, "I can't do anything about it." And then I thought, well, I've always been into working out. Let me start a online fitness business. So I created online courses, and that was okay, but there was too many things. Like, I would do it differently now, but I didn't know what I was doing. And I wasted a lot of money on software. And basically the bottom line was I just wasn't making any money. I said, let me go back to writing, but I didn't want to do content anymore because the money wasn't there and the opportunities weren't there. And I thought, when I was doing my fitness business, I was looking into and talking to copywriters and thinking naively at the time that copywriting, how different could it be from content writing? It's a whole different thing. It's a different audience. It's a different purpose. So where content writing was just writing stories and it's information and entertainment, copywriting is on the marketing, or they call it the money end of it. So copywriting is to basically motivate people to take action. Usually it's to buy something, but it could be to sign up for something. Could be, create a lead magnet. And so I decided, I'm going to do copywriting. And it was not easy to go from content to copy. And I thought it would be like, oh, it's writing. It's not. It's just a completely different approach. So I started studying under some really well-known and high-level copywriters. I took their courses. I paid for one-on-one classes and courses, and then just started, attracting clients and getting into the real world with it. And so it's kind of a long answer to your short question.
No, it's good. To be fair, from where I'm sitting, the longer people can make their answers, the easier it makes my job. If I'm not speaking, I'm doing it well.
Yeah. But it's a whole different thing. Copywriting is, I think one of my favorite quotes about copywriting, and I forget, was it Eugene Schwartz? One of the famous copywriters said, "Copy isn't written, it's assembled," which is really the biggest difference. Yeah. I mean, you still kind of assemble content with, like, for example, if I'm writing an article, I used to write a lot of health and fitness articles. So if it was on, heart attacks or heart disease in women over 50, which I've written a lot about, I would get a hold of people who maybe experience a heart attack. I'd look on Amazon, find books and book authors who's written on the subject, try to get them on a call, assemble that, get the research and all that, and then put it together into a story. Where copywriting is similar, but I'm looking for different things now. Like, I want to know what happened. Like, say it's a client who's selling a fitness. I work with B2B. So it's a SaaS product for a gym franchise, for example. What is it? How is it helping? Like, I would talk to the owner of the franchise. What was your life like before you used the software? And what is it like now? And I'd be looking for quotes, things I could use in their copy. It's just a different way of looking at it and approaching it.
Can you just explain to people that don't know what B2B is?
Oh, business to business. So B2C would be business to consumer. So in the fitness world, if I am running a retail store that's selling workout equipment to a consumer, it's B2C. But if I am selling, say it's a planning schedule, because a lot of SaaS companies that sell planners for gyms to use. So you go into the gym, what's your class like what kind of classes do you offer? And they usually have a calendar. Like that I'd be selling to the owner of the franchise or whoever it is, the decision maker. So that's B2B. So it's not direct to consumer, but is definitely influenced by what the consumer wants. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it does. It's just because it can be quite a general audience. It is good to just break down, like you say, there's a big difference between business to business and business to consumer, and it helps people understand, because the things with marketing and copywriting, there's the nuances in the details, and it can change between the industries that you're talking to, and how you're doing that. Have you been found that there's been much impact? Because I've debated this with lots of people to do with digital video and stuff like that. And my opinion is, I think viral videos in that sense become overrated because they're often paid for, and sort of like trying to get the perfect 60-second clip on Instagram or TikTok to make it go viral. In my experience these days, it's probably got some money behind it somewhere, even if that's just paying a high-end influencer to promote, to tag it and share it, whatever. But I think there was an element of people that went off in a certain direction, like this is the future, forgetting that some people like to read, and that actually a well-placed advert, a well-placed copy still has its place, and if anything, is just as important. Sure.
Yeah, that's why you need to kind of have, is your question about, do I find video valuable or?
Well, but it can be all things. Do you know what I mean? It's like, because obviously that changed. Well, when I talk to clients and I talk to like guests and stuff, and if you remember, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, print was God. It was everything. And how you wrote print and how you advertised and all of that. And then when social media came in, it changed the horizon, and suddenly, things just disappeared that were once like in scripture that will never change. Yeah. Suddenly it did change. But it also, there is a generation of people that are like I've had this conversation with people like, I don't need to advertise, I can make a video. Yeah, but how do you know that there's a difference between your audience and your customers? Right. And it's, the skill of marketing is where are my customers and what format are they on?
Right. Yeah, you really have to. it always comes down to knowing your audience, and that's sort of you hear that a lot on like LinkedIn, just you need to know your audience, but it's so true, because typically companies don't dive in far enough, because they do what I call, I've heard this somewhere, it's not my words, but they inhale their own fumes. Like when they're in a board meeting or whatever, right? And they're all patting each other on the back for how ingenious their wording is or whatever. But you need to talk to your customers and really use, like for fitness, for example. I'm in gyms all the time. I've been in the fitness world for decades. So I know the lingo, I know how to talk, how people talk about it and the terms they use. I've written for women's publications where they said, we don't use the word muscle, which is insane. I don't know if that's changed because it's been a while, but they'd say, we say, tone or, firmness, but we don't say muscle. But what is giving you that tone is the muscle. It's those things just drive me crazy. But there's people consume information differently too. Like even if it's a video podcast, like this, or I have one as well. And people will sometimes keep it on in the background, but they'll still just listen to it. But it's nice to see a face, so I don't know. I think the key is to get as much out there. Like I have clips and, I post on social media. I have an assistant who helps me. I'm not really active on Facebook. I'm not really active on Instagram, but I do post. I have her post on there because I don't know who's looking, even though I know my posts and my clients would be a LinkedIn. So I take care of that myself, but you never know where someone's going to find you. So I think that's the reason for, people getting video out. And I don't know if video is as crazy, like if it converts as much as it was. Like I would hear all these really ridiculous sounding percentages of people who prefer video. I just don't know if that's changed recently because it's gotten so rampant.
Yeah, because I think
TikTok.
Yeah, I think there was a point where, so one of the things I started to notice, and I have a very good friend who does a lot of digital media, and him and I always debate, like, which side of the fence is best, if you like. And my point is always start straight off with, before I even place an advert, if I want you to do a film, it's £1,000 a day, because you're going to turn up with a camera, etc., etc., etc. Whereas if I go to Copywriter or do my own copy or something like that, I can put all of my budget into the advert. And it's we can do it from home. And I'm not saying one is better. I'm just interested from people like yourself who are much more established and actually do it for a living, where you find dynamics and where the trends are shifting. Because it's very easy for me to debate when I'm not, neck deep in it. It could easily be argued I haven't got a clue what I'm on about.
What's that? I didn't catch that.
I said it could easily be argued that I haven't got a clue what I'm on about, because I'm not massively in the industry. It's not how I'm earning my living.
Well, with copywriting, I mean, I guide companies to what like suggestions about video. For example, a lot of people have videos on their header. So the top part of the web, the home page, which is the main page, the hero section is that top big part. That's the most important real estate because it's before anyone starts scrolling. It's above the fold. And a lot of companies are putting video up there. And I've looked into this, like to see, and I've talked to my copywriting coaches who know a lot more about copywriting. They've been in the business longer than me. And the general consensus is, unless you're a company that really has an ambiance to what you offer, for example, a travel destination, they would do well to have a nice video of a beach and, people. But if you are selling something like software, it's distracting because what could you show? I noticed that a lot of fitness brands are using video. To me, it's distracting because we know what people look like when they're working out. I don't know what that would mean, but you want to have people focused on the copy. So I try to guide people with where to use the video. Like if it doesn't benefit you there, I do think video is very valuable for further down the page. If you're doing like CEO of the company, maybe addressing, what it is they do, or, something like that would be definitely valuable, but have it well done too, especially, on a website.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I can kind of understand that. Because I think it's going to be an interesting sort of few years moving forward. Just with nobody kind of knows where social media platforms are going to finish. Everyone's always talking about what's the next social media platform to happen, and is there going to be a generation of? So I have a niece I think she's now 13. It won't matter if I've got that wrong. She doesn't listen to anything I say anyway. So, but I ask her, and they're not really on social media. They're on WhatsApp or some form of messaging. They're not really kind of bothering with social media the way that, people did 10 years ago. So I'm not sure. Sorry?
I said, really? I'm surprised. Even TikTok? Like, it's not.
Yeah, they're not on it. They started on it, but of course they were always getting hit with the age ban, so they just like, well, there's no point. And I mean, there's legislation being talked about in the UK at the moment and in other countries in Europe about banning mobile phones to children under 16. So that again is going to change the dynamic, because obviously everybody wants to know where the people are spending their money. whatever industry in, it's where are they spending that money, and how do I get access to that? Which ultimately is what, if you have a product to sell, is what you should be trying to achieve. So I'm always curious as to what the future is and where does it go, because the principles that you use are never going to change. They're always going to be the same. I mean, that's why advertising in the kind of there was a period, I think, from like the 40s to the 60s where advertising was really exciting, because you started getting like electronic devices like fridges, TVs, radios, stereos, and these brand new sparkling products that looked space age and brought an entire world into your house. It was just, an advertiser's, copywriter's dream.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? I mean, the thing is too, that if you look at AI, obviously that's the elephant in the room here with, Chat GPT. And I mean, when you think last year at this time, I think chat was just starting to take off a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, within a year, it's just exploded. And I use it for research sometimes, to at least to guide me to where to start my research. I will use it to outline things, and it helps to speed up the process. Like I'll definitely take, but it's not always accurate. I mean, even with, I will take it and like I record interviews with people, say customers of a client that I'm trying to get some quotes from, and I'll record the interview, put it into chat, and ask it to pull out what are the bullet points, what are the most important points. Then I'll go back and see if it was correct. And sometimes it misses some things, but it's a start, but who knows next year at this time? I mean, because I think it's possible to predict.
Well, I used to use ChatGPT to write my video descriptions for podcasts. And initially it started out really well. And then it kind of become repetitive, regardless of what the subject was. It kind of had the same, we dive deep into, or we delve deep into, and it's like, I can't. So then I would reword different titles to see if I got different paragraphs come up, and I might pull the paragraphs, and then it turned into ideas, and now I just don't use it. Because it's like, look, just engage your brain, because it's kind of gone down this route. And then I seen the company is being taken to court for plagiarizing people's work. So I'm wondering what format is going to exist in the net, because if the cases are successful, or the court cases at least, then that's going to open up a big issue for any AI moving forward. Because it's going to struggle, because if you're getting sued because your product is plagiarizing other people's work, it's a product that nobody's can use, because they're going to be like, whoa, so, and it did seem to be, the thing about humans is we can always be original, and AI was always scanning other people's work and taking it from that. And, and I think that will probably always be its Achilles heel.
I heard yesterday on the radio that I forget, I didn't catch the beginning of the news thing, but they were talking about how AI is going to start scanning all the YouTube videos and pulling transcripts from YouTube. I think there's some big debate about that. So it's just going to get everything. Like there's nothing you can put out there that it's not going to grab. And as a copywriter, it's like, this helps my case in one way, where when I work with a new client, I always emphasize to them the importance of having a clear value proposition. So this is why does somebody choose you over your competitors? And you need to be really clear on that. And that's something that if you're going to differentiate yourself, AI is not going to do that for you, because it's only pulling what's out there already. It's not. In fact, I even asked AI itself, what are the downsides to you, basically? And it said, AI doesn't originate. It doesn't come up with original. It just pulls from what's been out there. So I tell people, my clients, you need to come up with something that not everyone is talking about. And like you said, take a deep dive into, or what's some of the other things that comes up, but it's the same cliches over and over. Yeah.
And it becomes obvious. It's like, oh, this has been written by AI. And it, with a podcast I was doing with somebody else, a friend of mine, the digital media guy, we still have a weekly podcast together. And it got to the point where people were starting to say, your description is written by AI when it was just putting in YouTube shorts and stuff like that. And you sort of like, it's just getting too obvious. You can't.
Yeah.
There's something about it that, it just, no pun intended, it just looks artificial. It's just like a person wouldn't write that. And, I guess we're lucky. That's the nuances of being human. And, so say, actually, we'll use it. I'm going to get some free advice maybe. If you were doing if I was approaching you for a podcast, where do we start? How does the process start?
Podcast for what, to advertise
because obviously everything you do it's not a single thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like you like you say, because I know, like you said, you the background with the writing and the fitness industry and stuff like that, but you kind of have to be like a jack of all trades and a master of all trades. You almost have to anticipate what somebody wants when they come to you talking to you about a product. They kind of expect you to be one step ahead of them. And so it's like, if I came to you with a podcast and say, look, I want to do marketing and copying for my podcast, where do I start? What forms do you think I should use? Or do you, what would the process be? Like literally, where would your advice be?
My first question, which is the biggest one, is who's your audience? Who's listening? Or who do you want to listen to your podcast? So, for example, with my own, it's, it's, as I said, business to business. So B2B, people in the health and wellness industry. And I recently just niched down to that because I had been targeting SaaS, that software as a service, but that is such a huge field that I said, let me narrow down to my expertise, which was fitness. So I would ask you, who is listening to your podcast, or who would you like to listen? Who's your target audience? And if I were to do writing for you, we would sit down for a full hour and I have a series of questions to dig into everything about them. Mm-hmm. Questions like what are the biggest struggles and what are the challenges that you see? And once I ask all these questions, we would have that call. I'd go out. I would ask you for any analytics that you had on current marketing that you've done. Your website, if you had website, what is, what the activity on that? What are the conversions? Where do you see the big challenges? And then I would do my research. And this is the part that's often misunderstood about copywriting, especially like I'm a conversion copywriter, and people say, oh, that's a bogus term. Well, it's not, because I paid a lot of money to get that certification. And I worked with Joanna Weeb, who is she's like the OG, she's originated the term conversion copywriter. And there's some differences between conversion copywriting and traditional copywriting. There's also a lot of overlap. So the difference is that I use formulas to create copy. So you've probably heard of problem, agitation, solution, the PAS formula. That's kind of the most common marketing term. So, but that's kind of for another conversation. But just so you know, there's some differences. I would do my research, and this would involve, I'll send you a checklist of all, I call it my wish list. Do you have, what are your Google analytics? What are, all the analytics that you have? Send me anything you have. Most people have like some of them, but not a lot of them. I'd ask you for people who you would like to listen, or who you think your audience would be. Do you have some names you can give me? People who've worked with you if you're selling something. Like usually it's because people are selling something. Who have you worked with that may be willing to talk to me? I aim for 12 people. If I get 5, that's pretty much, people are busy. No one wants to talk to you. But I get them on the phone, ask them a lot of questions about their experience with my client. And so this takes weeks between gathering all the information, between getting people on a call. Could be 4 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks typically. And then once I get all that information, it's like building blocks. So I have software that I use that I can put things on cards. So I start categorizing. And this is why they say copywriting is about assembling. And so I assemble the pieces that would fit. For say it's a homepage. What's the value proposition? What did I get out of that? Who's saying, and what are they saying? What is something I could use in the copy that sometimes people will say something, I'll be talking to them and they'll say such a great quote that I will mark it like either physically or on my computer. This is going to make it into a headline. And it's happened a lot of times. Like there's one, for example, I was writing for a company that sells mobile apps for people in the agriculture business. And because I don't just do fitness, I mean, that's my specialty. But and one of the people I spoke to said, I love that this app, I can use it offline. He said, because there's no Wi-Fi in the chicken coop. I'm like, that's great. And that actually
is brilliant, isn't it? That's a gift.
So, and that's how it works. And then, I write it. We, I go back and forth with the client. We edit where necessary, and then we test it, once it's out there. And so that's basically it. I mean, there's a lot in that, but the research takes about 80% of the time.
I'm mulling over that line. There's no Wi-Fi in the chicken coop. That is just...
My client loved it.
You can imagine when you present that to a client, can't you? Because that's that perfect line where anybody who's an end user knows exactly how that feels. And it taps into that human experience of, when I'm down in the valley, I can't get a Wi-Fi. I know exactly what that person's on about. That literally is the cliche of, you have to demonstrate to somebody how you solve the problem. They have a problem and you're solving it. And that line describes the problem, solves the problem. And every agriculture guy knows what he means when he says there's no Wi-Fi in the chicken coop.
Yeah. And I wouldn't have gotten that on my own, just researching. You're not going to find that, and I, even talking to the client, they didn't say that. I mean, they'd probably know that. It's like, hey, where there's no Wi-Fi, well, where would that be? Oh, chicken coop doesn't have Wi-Fi. You could still use the app, but he didn't say it, but one of his customers did. So, but that's the kind of thing. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That also highlights something you say, like that 80% research. That highlights that never forget to listen to your customers.
Yeah. What helps all the years of content writing, when I would do article writing, I spoke to so many people, all walks of life, people with PhDs, and I'm good at handling, like if someone, because I've had some people are very disagreeable. I've been yelled at, I've been called names, and I just, I have a way. I think it's just experience from working with people. And I've been told this by PR people. I had one guy once, for example, it was a health article, and I was interviewing the head of this huge hospital out in California, and he's the head of everything. And his PR person put me in touch with him. And when I got him on the phone and I was asking him questions, and I get very to the point because I know these people are super busy. And he said at one point, he goes, wait a minute. Do you even know who I am? And I said, I don't know if he meant it like, don't you know who I am? Or do you know my title? I don't know, but it could have gone either way. And I had his title right in front of me. So I rattled it off. MD, PhD, he had all these. He said, okay, I just wanted to make sure you knew, like that he wasn't just, an average guy.
Yeah, he wasn't the janitor.
When I told this PR person that, he goes, you know what? He's really tough to handle, but he says, I knew that you could do it. So I think that's key, getting into, getting people to talk, and not everyone does want to, they're reluctant.
It's one of those things. Many, many years ago, I used to do customer services. It's kind of what I call where I learn. I work in healthcare now. I tell people that everything is just a customer services problem. It means somebody has a problem, your job is just to solve it. It's customer services. I don't care what the industry is. It's customer services.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And I used to say, like, I'd be teaching people on the front desk, like things you just the simple basics. And it's just like, look, 99% of our problems are where we shoot ourselves in the foot, and because we're not listening or talking and asking questions, getting people to talk to us. And they might seem reluctant, but just explain to them on the phone, It's easier to talk to me now on the telephone than when you walk in at 9 o'clock and hand me the keys to your car in 3 weeks' time. And put them in a place, and from that point, pretty much every problem anyone's going to present to you, we've already dealt with and already have a solution. Mm-hmm. But if you don't extract that information from them, before they walk into the dealership, we've created the problem. We've not solved it. And I said, and you want that smooth process, like you say, just people don't want to talk. Your job is to get them to talk, because without extracting like their pain points, extracting what it is that, what is their experience that they can't stand talking to you? Somewhere someone's made it really uncomfortable for them.
Right.
So you've got to navigate around that little obstacle and sort of and make it so that when they get off the phone, it's like, do you know what? That was pretty easy. That was pretty simple. Because you'll be the person that stands out to them. And then if they want to use you again, you're their go-to person because you were the only one they had a pleasant experience with. And then if you do make a mistake, it gives you so many out and get out of jail free cards because they like you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you have to meet them where they are. When I used to do in-home personal training, and I was in the midst of some volatile situations. I'm literally walking into people's houses when they sometimes have just finished having an argument, or they're in the middle of an argument with somebody in the house. If I was working in a gym, it wouldn't be. And I did that for a short time, but in home was where the demand was, and it was just what I wanted to do. But if somebody's really angry, and it's happened once, and think of one in particular. This client, he just had a big argument with his mother-in-law. They had the whole family over, and I was like, oh no, it was 7 o'clock in the morning. I was over the house, and he was just fired up. He was looking for an argument. So I just kept quiet, and even though I was quiet and I was just kind of waiting for him to kind of calm down, and I was just focusing. I'm not going to ask him anything. And he was still lashing out to me. And at one point he said something where I said, you don't talk to me like that. Yeah. I'm not going to work with you if you're going to talk to me like that. You do sometimes get to that point. But when it comes to a client, like the biggest pushback I get from talking to my clients' customers is if there's someone, it's like, okay, I was happy with the service, but I really don't want to get the phone with this person being me. And so I start out by saying, I'm going to make this as quick as I can. I just, I know you like this product, and I'm helping them I explain why I'm talking to them. I want them to be able to attract more people like you, or however I word it. I don't know. It's different for everybody. But a lot of people say, okay, I need to know exactly what you're doing. What are you going to do with these quotes? What are you going to, I will explain it. I'm not quoting you on anything. I'll tell them if we're going to use a quote, we'll contact you. But I'm just trying to feel, what your experience has been like. And I think when you explain things, people they calm down, they relax, especially if you say, listen, I'm not going to quote you. I just want to get an idea of what your experience was, with this product or service. And then they're going, okay. And, you have to be good with people, and you have to know how to talk. If you're combative, or if you're like, listen, I'm doing this because I want to get some information. You have to know how to talk. So
it is, isn't it? It's interesting because you said something important earlier as well, that sometimes these people are busy, and it's not that they're not rude, but you might be one of 20 people who are trying to get their attention that day. And they have to have some sort of filter that says, why would I give you my attention? Because I'm not going to give it to somebody else. Because that time slot of 20 minutes, 30 minutes means somebody else isn't having it. And I'm the one that has to delegate who I give my time to. And I think it's important sometimes that when people are reaching out, understand that person has made a decision to hear you out for 30 seconds. And then they're going to be like, we're not doing this.
Yeah.
I'm just too busy. When do you know, like when you're on YouTube and you see all the videos of copywriting, marketing and all that, and it says 10 things I wish I'd knew and 10 things you do wrong. What do people do right? What do they do well?
with the copywriters or the people
like if somebody's listening to this and they're trying to understand the business, they're trying to understand the industry, but they don't have a budget and they're not sure about training, but maybe they're just thinking, I want to just write a simple poster for cupcake sale, to raise funds for the school or something like really basic.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that when it's done well, what does that look like?
The first thing is it triggers emotion in the person, and it's focused on them. Like, you want to tap into what would make them. So if you're raising money, and you see this all the time for people raising money for a good cause, is they focus on the pain that the person is in that they'd be helping, help out. I mean, sometimes it's to a degree where it's, excuse me, it's tough, like with the animal welfare stuff. But you have to find what is it that would make them want to do that. So, and there's so much psychology that goes behind it.
Yeah, there is.
There's a lot of it. So there's there's podcasts on it. There's like all kinds. There's books, literally books on how to do this. So it really depends on the audience. What is it that makes them want to do that? And it could be, yeah.
Well, to word it differently, here's a different way to look at it, because this is like, and you'll understand this because of fitness, right? If you go on YouTube or just type into Google, how do I get fit? It's like, you're never going to live long enough to even read 1% of the articles. Right?
Exactly.
But basically, the very basics of getting fit start with one simple question. What's your idea of being fit? Right. Mm-hmm. And from there, right now, which rabbit hole do you want to go down? But basically, you've got to come up with what is your idea of being fit? Is it running marathons or is it looking like a bodybuilder?
Right.
And that's where your questions lead off. And so, and that's kind of what I'm trying to build a framework around when I say, like, well, what is a good, marketing pitch, copyright pitch? Do you know what I mean? What does it look like to the end user when they receive it? Or if somebody wants to, right, what do I need to do? So the basics is you need to tap into the emotion. Like, because when you said like that line of, I don't get Wi-Fi in the chicken coop, just, there's no one it doesn't resonate with. Because that could resonate to the garage mechanic who's, he's just got a poor signal in the corner of a workshop.
Yeah.
There's so many people that understand a location and no Wi-Fi and the frustration that causes. And it's a great tagline. It's a great product placement. It's an emotion that honestly, it's like God himself said it. It's just perfect because it just resonates across so many layers and levels.
Right. It depends on where you're using the copy. Excuse me. Like if you're doing an ad, because I've written Facebook ads.
Yeah.
Well, where you have
let's
only
do
a certain
Facebook ads then, because that's something that people try to play about with.
Mm-hmm. Facebook ads any ad really is difficult because you have only a few words. Like especially, it's the headline, it's the subject line in the email, it's the first, that's the hook. That's what's most important. Like they say 80% of people don't get past your headline. So if you don't get a headline that draws people in or a subject line on an email, they're not going to open it. They're not going to read the rest of it. The hardest thing with Facebook too, kind of as an aside, because I wrote for my own fitness ads, is there's so much you can't say. You can't make people feel bad. And fitness and health are the hardest ones. I mean, an example, I once had an image. I tried to have an image of a tape measure on an ad. They said, no tape measure. It makes people feel bad. Definitely no before and after pictures. That's for sure. So, it's hard. It depends on the audience. Like for fitness, because this is what I know the best is like, if it's for a consumer, it would be like something about, is it time to, and this is not what I'd write, but like this, I'd start brainstorming. It's time to pull out those favorite pair of pants you haven't tried to fit into in a year, or something like what you want to get into their head. Like, what are they thinking? And so that when they read the copy, like you said, they're like, you're continuing the conversation that's going on in their own head, ideally. Like they've been something that they're going through life. They're doing their thing. And, in this case, okay, I'm going to put on these pants and they don't fit me, the frustration. So you don't want to make them feel bad about it. But what about, what if there was something that could help you, get back into those?
So it's kind of understanding the pain, but not letting it feel painful, making it feel like you're the solution.
Right. It's like, it's okay. You're not alone.
Yeah.
There's help kind of thing.
Yeah.
Everything comes down to that. The Wi-Fi thing, the mobile app. It's like, okay, so you have a chicken coop, and now guess what? You can use this app in there. We have a solution. Yeah.
So because the fitness one is interesting, isn't it? Because it's a huge market, a massive, massive market, and everybody wants a shortcut. Nobody wants to spend the next, basically the rest of their life going to some form of gym or fitness class, which is what's required as a general rule of thumb if you want to stay fit. It's a bit of repetitive nature to it. So I'm trying to, so it's effectively acknowledging a problem, but in a way making them feel good about the problem, because the solution that you have is tangible, within reach. You just have to keep reading and you'll discover how I'm going to help you. Right.
Like there's a headline formula that says, here's, you want to say what the promise is without whatever the negative thing is. So for the most common one you'll see is how to lose weight without giving up your favorite foods. How to fit into your favorite jeans without giving up chocolate. I mean, what is it? Then that could apply
That's
to any
got to be a winner.
A niche. Yeah.
Carry on eating crap, but I'll help you lose weight.
How to lose weight without getting off the couch. That's the ideal thing. But a lot of that's, some of that's very clickbaity, but if you have the solution, you can prove it.
Yeah. Yeah. But clickbait works for a reason.
I know.
It taps into a necessity. Yeah. So, I mean, there's dynamics, isn't there? Because you can writing with humor, then writing seriously, and writing in a conversational style. It's how do you break it down? Because what is the best? What's going to work the best way? Because you're the one that has to navigate which one to go. How do you make those decisions?
It's the tone and voice that, that's one of the most important things is you want to use the voice of the brand and also reflect what your customers are thinking. Who does this best is Apple. You see their ads. Yeah. Those are the gold standard. All of my copywriting coaches are always quoting Apple. And they often start with a headline that you would never think. Like there was one for showing how waterproof the new phone was. And it had PSSST, or FFFT, water, that was the headline. And they have very kind of flippant headlines, but yet the rest, the body copy is very serious, but it's clear, and it's not cluttered with a bunch of stuff you don't need.
Because as soon as you said Apple, it reminded me of that famous Steve Jobs news press conference where he was talking about how he was going to change the music world, and then pulled an MP3 player, an iPod out of his pocket, and he was just there, just casually talking as if he hadn't designed anything. And then he just pulls out this thing and says, and it's all here. And it has
1,000 songs in your pocket is what he said. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I can still remember watching that for the first time. And the whole audience was like, oh, wow. Because you've just, they realized they'd witnessed the next stage of technology. he was so casual in the fact that he had this in his pocket the whole time. And he's just like, that's what, it's just a little thing we've been knocking about with.
I know. And there's so many stories about him. And I never saw the movie on him. I know he wasn't a popular guy, but he was a genius when it came to marketing.
Yeah.
I remember this one story I read about him telling his engineers he wanted this, I think it was the iPod, at the time, he wanted it small as possible. And they said, this is as small as we can get it with these components. And he took it and dumped it in a fish tank and bubbles came out. And he said, see those bubbles? There's space in there. Get rid of it. Like, that's the kind of thing. It's like, who's doing this? But that's, I
remember watching that film and I've seen lots of interviews about him. And it definitely was not the most pleasant person to be around. However, what everyone says is, if you're not like that, you're not going to achieve what he achieved. So it's a double-edged sword. You can't have that level of drive and genius and then accept anything other than your own vision.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like tough. You say, but because who would think to throw it into a fish tank? See those air bubbles? Yeah, but you wouldn't, would you? You wouldn't think to do that, But he could see that, this is the best way to demonstrate it. This is the best way to get stuff done. And sometimes I think when you're running a large organization like he was, and you're trying and successfully leading the technology front, people have to understand that you are not prepared to be compromised and that you are this uncompromising person. And the rules are very simple. You either marched on the same tracks as me or just march out the door and don't look back because you're not welcome. And, just most people can't be like that. And that's why there's very few Steve Jobs about.
You can't worry about what people think of you because the people who are like him, and they're rare, they're real outliers, and they are the ones that, come up with ideas that everyone else is going to say, oh, that's not going to work. What was it that Ford said back, when he invented the first car? He said, if I listened to what people wanted, they'd tell me faster horses, So you have to think of things that people aren't thinking of on their own, and you have to believe in it yourself. And it's not easy. That's for sure. It's easier to go with the flow and just people tell you that it's like, well, maybe you're right. So.
Do you just as we're getting close to finishing up, I just wanted to. You mentioned something important that when you were doing studying yourself, and like people were saying like the best advertisers out there are Apple, and look at what they do. And are there any sort of adverts or companies from any era that you tell people to look at, like study how they sold their products, what they did? Because one of the first ones that stands out to me, and it's an age thing, don't get me wrong, was the Sony Walkman, and I can still see the image of this Walkman in someone's pocket. In a cassette tape, do you know what I mean? And it was just a poster in a magazine, and you just like, and again, it had that classic. It tells me everything I need to know just by looking at it. I don't need to know anything else.
Well, as I said, Apple is the big one. There's a lot of SaaS companies though that are really good at it. Like, and they change their websites constantly. Basecamp is known for being, have you heard of Basecamp, Crazy Egg? A lot of the SaaS companies have gotten really good at that. Those are the two that I always.
Crazy Egg is a fantastic name. So
it's just one of my coaches worked for them. Yeah.
But Crazy Egg just captures the imagination with 2 words.
Yeah. You want to know what it's about.
Yeah, I do.
And I don't know who came up with it. Yeah.
and it's one of those ones that would easily be dismissed as a silly idea.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'd say some of the really big SaaS companies like that, the ones that are, and I don't know about Monday.com. I'm looking at on my computer here. I would say Slack. I would look at some of the really big, I think Slack is another one that is definitely up to date. They tend to change their copy on the homepage often. Like Slack says, made for people, built for productivity, very to the point. It's not about being wordy or about being clever. It's really being clear. People want to know what they're getting into. And that's the big mistake I think that people make with their copy is a couple things. One is they try to put all the promises in one sentence. You can save time, you can make more money, you can, and they'll list all these things. It's like, you need to pick one and be better at it than your competitors. And that's super important. And make sure people know why you're different from your competitors. A lot of times what I do with my clients is I have them do, it's a value proposition. I call it a roadmap, but it's really like an audit of everything. And that's where I start. Because once you have that value prop down, and I usually give them come up with one main one and then a couple of other smaller ones, that's where all of your messaging should revolve around. Everything comes back to that.
So what would be a good example of a value proposition?
I mean, for me, it would be, and I don't have it right in front of me, and I should, but conversion copywriting for B2B brand, B2B fitness and wellness brands backed by expertise. I have this written down on it. It's embarrassing. I don't know it offhand. My background is the expert background.
Yeah. But it is, isn't it? It's you are still being very clear and exactly about this is exactly what I do, and this is how it's backed up.
Who you're right for, right?
Yeah. So it's effectively that. It's what I'm trying to think of how to articulate it without it sounding too clumsy. So a good value proposition would be, this is what we do, this is how I back it up. Is that a fair? Do you know what I mean?
It's what you do, who you do it for, and it should be memorable, succinct. There's actually 5 parameters, which I don't know all of them off the top of my head, but the most important one is it should be different, unique, easy to remember, but also memorable in what you say. And it's not a tagline. I mean, the people confuse those two. The candy M&Ms, melts in your mouth, not in your hands. That's a tagline, but it's also kind of a value prop. I don't know, no,
I know what you mean, because sometimes people want it to sound clever, like they're writing poetry, and you're just it's not really necessary. You're selling spanners. It goes on the end of a greasy nut sort of thing. It's actually, that could be the line, the spanner that fits a greasy nut. But it's like you say, sometimes people try to be overly clever and kind of get inside their own head, I've written this wonderful thing. He's like, but I still don't know what it is. Right. I don't know what it does. And it's like that.
Converting copy for, fitness and health brands. Because I consulted with one of my coaches and I said, should I say B2B? And she said, if you say fitness and wellness brands, people will know the brand is B2B business.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But that's actually an excellent example, isn't it? Because if you just mention the word brand, you don't need B2B.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone knows that, all right, it's a business to business. Okay. It's a brand.
Right.
Health and fitness brand. Fantastic. Because that's what I mean. It's the devil is in the details. And sometimes people don't realize that means make it simple.
Oh, yeah. And people are against that. It's like a lot of them are like, oh, we need to make it sound. It's not about sounding cute. It's about being clear. The difference.
That's a good tagline. It's not about sounding cute. It's about sounding clear. That's good. I like that. That's something you would never forget. Like there's no Wi-Fi in the chicken coop. It's not about.
My client would love that we're repeating that so many times, but
because it's a genius line, and I don't have chicken, but I know exactly what that person was feeling.
Yeah. And it came from the customer. That's the thing. I didn't come up with it. The CEO didn't come up with it. It was what his people said. So,
but I think if you were doing a course on like advertising and marketing and stuff and copywriting, it's not about sounding cute. It's about sounding clear. Is a wonderful like chapter in itself.
Yeah.
It's just like that.
I think I've heard something similar to that, but I don't think I stole that from anyone because I
take it.
That exactly.
Take it anyway.
Take it.
Because that could be like the next time you're pitching to a customer, it's like it's not about sounding cute; it's about sounding clear.
Yeah.
Because they'll know what that means. Because everyone would have tried to sound clever with them, and pitch them something. So, last question, and this is completely random and has nothing to do with anything we've discussed. I just like to randomly throw it in there. And it does involve your imagination. So, if you can imagine, you've got a magic wand, whatever way, time machine, magic wand, whatever. If you could go anywhere in time, where and when would you go? What vehicle would you drive, and what music would you listen to?
It's a lot. First, where would I go? Definitely the future. I don't want to relive anything in the past.
Okay.
The music, I mean, I'm pretty much a rock aficionado. I love metal, believe it or not. People don't think of me. I don't see how that would change. And what else was it? Music and
what vehicle would you be in?
I don't know. Something that flies, I guess.
Okay, so private jet, flying car.
Private jet would be nice.
Yeah, so private jet into the future. So you say metal? Is there a particular band or album you'd have on?
I like Godsmack, and I like this band called Adelita's Way that I'm getting really into. Are you familiar with either?
Not a chance. Not a chance.
They're actually. I don't like metal that is just noise. I mean, these bands, I'm one of these people. I have to know who's behind it. And I know these are people who are in Godsmack. People are like, oh, Godsmack. Well, the lead singer is 56 years old. He's been doing this since the 90s. He supports anti-bullying. Mm-hmm. He does a lot of good. It's not just the music. It's like, I like him as a person.
Yeah.
And Adelita's Way is kind of a similar band. They're really hard rock, but there's a lot in their music. Like they have messages. It's not just banging a lot.
Yeah.
Both of them are really good. So I listen to them.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Take care. So there you are. Thank you very much for listening. That was Linda. And hey, I'm going to finish with that amazing line. Chicken coops. Who would have thought it? Chicken coops. I loved that line. Just in case you didn't realize. It's so good. I could use it in the chicken coop. Take care. As always, thank you very much for listening, for watching. And wherever you are, whatever you believe, please take care. Be blessed.